All right, let's talk Dallas Cowboys. I'm Nick, and this is our daily Cowboys show. I tell you what, guys, not a great showing last night in the Cowboys' second preseason game, falling to the Baltimore Ravens by triple digits. Another disappointing preseason performance. What does it mean going forward? What did we like? What did we didn't like? And there was a not a lot like, but there was some things to like and focus on. But before we get into the details, let's do like we do every day on this channel and bring up what I call our stat of the day or chart of the day, maybe to pull people off the ledge a little bit. So let's bring up this first graphic here. This is last year's top 10 preseason performances per PFF. And you can notice a few things about this list, right? There's a lot of teams that were quite terrible during the regular season that did well in the preseason last year. In fact, the Bears had a really phenomenal preseason last year. They were 4-0, scored a lot of points, graded highly. They ended up firing everyone, had a top 10 selection. Jacksonville Jaguars, really nice preseason. Not a good season last year. Fire everyone, top 10 selection. The Broncos and Vikings, they were solid, and they were pretty good in the preseason. They were solid in the regular season last year. That's fair. But the Jets and Patriots were also solid in the regular season. They did not have good seasons last year. You can see Seattle, Houston, Green Bay, and Pittsburgh, decent last year in the preseason, but were pretty good. I will say some playoff teams there. Obviously, you look at I think Houston, Green Bay, and Pittsburgh were playoff teams. Seattle missed out. So sort of all over the map in terms of performances based on preseason success leading to regular season success. But I know you're going to say, hey, what about preseason failure? Because that's what we're seeing from Dallas right now. Well, I'm going to chart for that too. So this was the top 10 worst performing teams last year in the preseason. You had the Rams that were bottom 10 in terms of first performance. They ended up being pretty good, obviously, made the postseason. The Saints and Browns were, again, bottom 10 preseason and bottom 10 regular season. Washington and Baltimore, bottom 10 preseason, but good regular season teams. The Giants, bottom 10 regular preseason, very, very poor performer. And then you have the Bengals and Falcons, middle of the road, just missed the postseason, being quite terrible preseason performers. And the Kansas City Chiefs, the worst preseason performer in the NFL last year, obviously made the Super Bowl. Now, what does this tell you? Does this say, is there anything like, hey, listen, you do well in the preseason, doesn't mean you're going to do well in the regular season. If you do poorly in the preseason, doesn't mean you do poorly in the regular season. It doesn't tell you anything. That's the point here. Preseason performance does not correlate in any way, shape, or form to regular season performance. Now, I'm not going to say, and let's dismiss what we just saw, because what we've seen these past two preseason games is quite terrible. But let's keep that in mind as we work through this, right? There is no correlation at all whatsoever between preseason success and regular season success. It doesn't mean the Cowboys are going to be good, doesn't mean they're going to be bad, doesn't mean they're going to be okay. It's just that what we're seeing in terms of wins and losses and productivity on the scoreboard these past two games means anything when it comes to the regular season. That being said, let's dive into the performance, and it was not a good one, guys. Let's pull up the box score here, looking at the passing and rushing statistics. Joe Milton's numbers: 9 of 18, a buck 22, no touchdowns, 1 pick, 2 sacks. Those numbers are heavily skewed considering he had a really incredible throw, a 50-yard bomb, just an absolute just monster throw while being under pressure early in the second half. Overall, it was a disaster performance from Milton. He took a bad sack, resulting in a safety. His management of the game was terrible. His defense gets an interception. In the very next play, he throws in a double coverage and overthrows his receiver for an interception. Just across the board, a very terrible performance. No offensive touchdown drives. I mean, Joe Milton, to this point, has been an absolutely atrocious quarterback in the preseason. He's probably been the worst performing quarterback probably in the preseason among all guys. He has definitely been, I think this is pretty clear at this point, the worst performing guy who's a backup quarterback in the preseason. Now, I will be fair to Dallas, is that when you look at who they've had in the past, like Cooper Rush, who was playing for Baltimore, who coincidentally also threw 2 picks last night, guys. So again, you got to keep that frame of reference here. But when you have a veteran backup, they tend to do better in the preseason, right? They read the defense, hit the checkdowns, hit the open man. It's a lot of simple vanilla stuff defensively. So again, Milton would actually more likely do better in the regular season when there's a game plan set up specifically for him to make life easier. But he's been quite terrible, right? Greer came in at the end of the game, and look, this was probably my one complaint of what I was seeing more from this preseason game. And I bet if you were got Schottenheimer and his coaching staff in a private room, they were annoyed that by the late third quarter and through the fourth quarter, the Ravens, and we had all third stringers in the game. Most of the guys playing at that point aren't going to be on an NFL roster, or they're just fighting for like a practice squad spot. The Ravens at this point are still doing complex blitzes, blitzing nickel corners from all over the field. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it is sort of, I'm sure, pretty annoying from the Cowboys' perspective because you're like, hey, man, we're trying to evaluate, if our quarterbacks can play. And our offensive line is a bunch of guys that are going to get cut in 5 seconds or going to be practice squad guys. So how about we, or we got one or two maybe backups in the game. So how about we, not do complex blitzes, please? I think that was probably a lot of what Schottenheimer was thinking. We're trying to evaluate the quarterback position here, and you're overloading our offensive line like, it's the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl. But hey, look, that's what happens. I mean, the offensive line, the backups, they got some good experience picking up that kind of thing. You look at Hoffman, Bass, things like that. But I think, obviously some other guys in the mix as well trying to make the squad. But I think when you look at the quarterback position, it was quite terrible. I wanted to see film off the play. He was quite awful, right? He was terrible. I'm going to be totally blunt. He had one good run, two mediocre runs, and a horrific job in pass protection. So it's a small sample size, right? So I'm going to be honest about that. Very small sample size, but he was not good. Miles Sanders, I think, ran okay in his first action. Nothing special. I think they just wanted him some carries, get him some touches, get ready for the regular season. I think they gave the ball like 7 times out of 8 plays or 6 times out of 7 plays, something like that. Very similar. I made this joke before in 2004 when Bill Parcells gave the ball to Barnes, their fullback, Darian Barnes, their fullback, 3 times in 4 plays just to, get them ready for the regular season and evaluate a few things. I think that's what they were doing with Miles Sanders. I thought Deuce Vaughn didn't do anything once again. I mean, I'll give credit to Deuce Vaughn. At least he's not having a superstar preseason, right? Last year he was making all kinds of plays, and people are like, hey, we got to give Deuce Vaughn the football. None of that happening right now. So from an evaluation perspective, I mean, quarterback room and running back room were absolutely atrocious. You really can't even evaluate the wide receivers because of how bad the quarterback play was. That's just being totally honest. Let's talk defense here. All right, so this is the box score on defense. How about Andrew Booth, right? I mean, much maligned corner, had a decent day. Obviously, the pick six was a great play. Did a lot of other good things. Really good tackling day from the secondary across the board. Keeman Hall had a really good day tackling. I thought Childress was solid. Again, no real big plays or anything super significant that stand out to me. Again, I haven't watched the film. I'm just kind of going off memory here. But I thought he was fine. I thought the secondary, in terms of a lot of, again, young guys, those guys on the edge of the roster or guys that may have to contribute due to the injuries like Childress and Keeman Hall, I thought they were acceptable, right? I thought that was an improvement over what we've seen during the Rams' performance a week ago. So that was better. Linebacking core guys, I tell you what, Eberflus is as advertised. Good linebacker coach. Devon Clark had a phenomenal game. You see 7 tackles, 2 TFLs. Shamar James, again, doing good things as well. Amaris Leafau made some plays. Again, so what we've seen is definitely the linebacking core for Dallas is, I think, going to be a strength going forward. The defensive line, I thought their pass rush packages with their subgroup, right, because obviously Micah Parsons didn't play, Donta Fowler didn't play, but you look at Ezra Raku, you look at Nealand, you look at Houston, you could tell Sam Williams and say, okay, as a pass rushing group, they were pretty good. They had a couple really good sequences there, with just a 4-man pass rush. Run defense was a mixed bag. We'll get more to that in a little bit. I mean, it was some good, some bad. But honestly, what we saw run defense-wise, if that's how the season works out, that's not the end of the world. And I'll talk about that more about that later. But from an overall defensive perspective, I thought it was okay, right? I thought there was some improvement. I thought the pass rush looked a little bit better. I thought the secondary looked better. I thought there were some things individual players-wise we can get to over the coming days to evaluate. But offensively, it's just so bad. That's the problem. When you're not on the field and you go 3 and out and turnover, the Ravens had the ball for 40 minutes, right? The Cowboys couldn't do anything with the football. It's almost hard to evaluate players on offense and hard to evaluate players on defense because you just run out of reps, right? So again, there was some good thing for the defense. I mean, if you look at their first 3 possessions, they went punt, they went field goal after giving up a safety, and then they went pick 6. So again, if you talk about, I'll say the starting group, the backup group, so to speak, pretty good, right? All things considered, right? In fact, even if you look at the first 4 possessions, the 4th possession they gave up a touchdown, if you told the Cowboys during the regular season, if you had 4 possessions and they went punt, field goal, pick 6, and then you gave up a touchdown, you'd probably take that, right? This is going to be an offensive team that's going to go on Dak Prescott. So if you get a takeaway, a punt, a field goal, and 1 touchdown drive surrendered, there are worse things that you can do defensively, especially what we saw last year. So again, I think this is a defense that improved a lot more than the scoreboard looked like. I mean, just the disastrous offensive plays, the turnovers, surrendering the football with giving the Ravens great field position. There was a big kickoff return. It just was a bad day offensively for Dallas. Again, I think that's the main culprit here. All right, interesting strategy from Dallas, which I like. They made their starter, CeeDee Lamb, Pickens, Dak Prescott, warm up in full pads. As you can see the report here from John Machota, Dak Prescott isn't playing tonight, but he's taking part in the pregame warmups. Joe Milton is expected to play most of the game, if not all. I think this is a really good strategy. Most teams do this, but I think it's, get your starters warmed up, get them familiar with the routine, all of that. I think that's almost more important than playing the game, right? Go through the process, go through your pregame routine, figure out, hey, your time to go out and warm up, because it's one of those things where when you're in the locker room getting ready, there'll be certain skill groups or certain groups that'll go out at certain times. So quarterbacks and receivers will go out 55 minutes before, and then it'll be entire offense will meet 35 minutes before, and whatever. They'll go through whatever routine. And so just to get that under wraps before the first game of the season, get all of that ironed out, I think, again, most teams do this. I would guarantee pretty much all teams do it. But again, they did it here. This is a smart approach. It is the way to do it. This next post here is from Tommy Years. I thought this was a good note here. The Cowboys took Kaiir Elam off the field on the last few plays of that drive, talking about one of the early drives for the defense. In my honest opinion, he showed everything he needed to on those first two defensive drives and doesn't need to play anymore tonight. So Kaiir Elam was one of the few guys that will probably start in week one that they actually played in last night's preseason game. Now, to be fair, Kaiir Elam is a backup by design. He's only going to be a starter because of the injury to Trayvon Diggs, but he did get some live reps and did a lot of good things. That's kind of all they wanted to see from Elam because he didn't play at all against the Rams. I think, again, you're talking about a game that being managed for the future, right? They could have played Elam more. They could have played some of these other guys more, or, maybe done a more of a game plan job for Joe Milton. They didn't. They're still focused on evaluating individual players. I think Elam getting his reps in is a good sign. We'll break down more of what the individual players did over the coming days, but I think overall, from an individual basis, from the guys that will probably, or I should say hopefully, play for Dallas this season, I think we saw a lot of good on the defensive side of the football. All right, this next one here is kind of a funny post that was circulating around social media. I guess this was on one of the talk shows on Fox Sports, and LaShawn McCoy, who obviously is no fan of the Dallas Cowboys, he posted, Dak Prescott find a realtor because Joe Milton can play. This was back, I believe, a couple months ago, obviously, because when the Cowboys traded for Joe Milton. Boy, you talk about a take after what we've seen in the past two preseason games now. To be fair to Joe Milton, I will say this: none of this is game plan for his success, right? It's not, right? You're running you're against backup offensive line. Literally, they're from drive to drive with Joe Milton. They're moving around the guard and center, putting in new offensive tackles, putting in new running backs, different receiver groups. You talk about chaos for a quarterback position. It's so just bonkers, right? The defense is switching out guys too, right? So again, it's nothing but volatility around you. So it's a really tough thing to do. That being said, you would expect a guy to do some good things. We've seen Romo, Prescott, we've seen even Will Greer and other quarterbacks in the National Football League manage to do good things in the preseason. That being said, don't get caught up too much on some of this stuff. I think Joe Milton played quite poorly, don't get me wrong. But yesterday, one of the things that I think kind of went unnoticed a little bit is that the New York Giants, to use them as an example, not to pick on the Giants here, maybe they'll be better this season, is that they were playing Russell Wilson, still actively throwing the ball deep when there were like 6 minutes left in the second quarter, right? Russell Wilson's going to be their day one starter, veteran guy. Why are you doing that? What are you trying to get out of that, right? The idea is you want to look good. You want to build momentum. You want guys to feel better about themselves. And listen, that's one approach, and some teams do that. And the teams like the Chiefs and the Rams really don't care at all. They do a lot of winning. The Eagles don't do that. They do a lot of winning, to use that as an example. So I think you have to understand, what are your goals this preseason? And Dallas has shown that their goals are to not particularly do things to make life easier for themselves. Now, it could be an indication that'll be quite terrible during the regular season. We don't know yet. But I think it's to be one, I'll say, point of Joe Milton not burying him as bad as he's been, is that they're not exactly setting him up for success or not making life super easy for him. So we'll have to see in the third preseason game. Again, one of the things that's really concerning is that a lot of people are saying he's had a solid camp, but now we've seen two terrible preseason games. We got to see something positive, right? And I think that's what we're hoping for in the third preseason game. Again, less than a week away. All right, final point here. This tweet is from Todd Archer, good reporter for ESPN.com for the Cowboys, the beat reporter. He posted last night, the Cowboys have not really shown any answers for the run defense this preseason, have they? Ravens have 131 yards on 34 carries and a touchdown. So I'm just bringing this up as just sort of a point of where stats can be manipulated, right, into whatever narrative you want. So this stat, you read it, says, they gave up 131 yards and a touchdown. Now, that's bad run defense. That's not good. Imagine if the post said this, the Cowboys have shown big improvement in the run defense game. They've given up less than 4 yards per carry against the Ravens tonight. That would be 100% factual. They gave up less than 4 yards per attempt, at least I think on the final numbers and on this number as well, right? A lot of people say, wow, less than 4 yards per attempt. Okay, that's below where you want to give up. 4 yards is sort of the median, sort of the target point on either side. Offense wants to be over, defense wants to be under. Defense surrendering less than 4 yards per attempt. Wow, that's pretty good. We'll take it, right? But here you read this telling of it. It's like, oh, 131 yards. That's not very good. We don't like that. So again, it's one of those things, right, where you can literally say one fact and it's sort of one statistic and say, oh, look how bad this is. And then you can literally take that same set of numbers and reframe it, be 100% correct, and it's got the entire opposite narrative. So again, that's just something to keep in mind when you guys see numbers and see data and people throw out stats. Me too. I do this all the time. Or you can take a number and you think it has this narrative and this meaning, but it can very quickly be manipulated, not negatively, but to show a completely different meaning. Again, if Archer had posted they've given up less than 4 yards per carry, that's a big improvement. That wouldn't be wrong, right? But it's the same data, two different narratives, something to keep in mind. Now, when it comes to run defense, I think the Cowboys yesterday, at least for the first 4 possessions, because that's kind of what I'm focusing on, because that's where you actually saw some guys that will actually be playing for Dallas, right? Come regular season. I kind of like what I saw, right? This is not going to be a good run defense. I've been saying this entire offseason, this entire channel. The goal is to get from 30th to 20th, and Eberflus clearly has his entire design has been, I'm going to try and allow my linebackers to make a few plays so we can get to third down for our pass rush packages. And look, first drive of the game for the Baltimore Ravens. They ran the football, I believe, on a first down play after getting a first down the play before. Clark burst through, 3-yard tackle for loss. Good job. They get him to third and long, pressure on the quarterback, incomplete pass as the quarterback gets hit in the dirt. Punt. Good job, right? Second drive for the Baltimore Ravens after the offense gets a safety. The Ravens pound the rock, going right down the field. 6 yards, 7 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards, 4 yards, right down the field. Doesn't look good, but they get a stop in the red zone. Settle for a field goal. Okay, we'll take that. Third drive for the Baltimore Ravens. Run up the middle, 1 yard, another run, 1 yard, 2 plays, 3rd and 8, pick 6, right? So again, that's sort of what the Cowboys want to do in terms of run defense, right? They want to make a few plays to where they can get their playmakers, their edge rushers, their corners, DeRon Bland, Diggs when he's healthy, guys like that, to unleash them. And right, and there's going to be drives where it's going to look really bad. There may be games where it looks really bad, but the strategy I think we saw is to unleash the linebackers, the playmakers, to make some plays to get teams to 2nd and 12, to get them to 2nd and 13, right? And I think we saw that even when they got, in the second half, when it was all the backups and a lot of undrafted free agents playing on both sides, I think I saw a defensive line and linebacking core that was slashing, trying to generate big plays. That's exactly what Eberflus has been trying to do, right? It's a lot less of what I think Dan Quinn tried to do defensively, where it was just sort of just hang on for dear life a little bit, and then force turnovers and things like that. I think Dan Quinn, and we see this with Washington too, that he's much more of a let's just figure out a way to make a play as opposed to a much more strategic way to use your linebackers like Eberflus does. Nothing against Quinn, it's just a little different stylistically, and I kind of like the strategic approach. Now we'll have to see how they execute, and considering Eberflus has done a good job with his linebacking core, I think that's a great sign, but I kind of actually like what we see from the run defense. Now again, they're still going to be bad. They're going to be below average. I mean, they're going to be under 16th in the NFL. They're going to be 17th or worse. I think it's all but a guarantee. They're probably going to be at least 20th or worse. If they're 20th, I would be very impressed. But the reality is, I think their strategic decision and how they're approaching it is the right move to make. Remember, like I said, there's first 4 possessions. Punt, field goal after your offense gets a safety. That's a tough position. Pick 6. And then then you have to go right back on the field and you give up a touchdown drive. But even then, you got some stops that came down to a 4th down opportunity. So it's one of those things where I think the first 3 or 4 possessions for the Dallas defense, the one where, again, some guys actually played that will be playing during the regular season, was okay. And again, Cooper Rush, as much as Cooper Rush is not an elite guy by any stretch of the imagination, he is an NFL quarterback. I mean, the guy's won 9 games as a starter. He's played a lot of football, right? So again, he's a veteran guy. The Ravens are a veteran organization. So I think it was a good test for a lot of these backups for Dallas defensively. And I think in some regards, defensively, I thought it was okay. Offense was a disaster. Defense was okay. And that was sort of my takeaway. And we need to break down individual players. I think Clark did good. I think James did good. Like I said, Maffa was a real struggle. Milton was a disaster. Didn't see anything from the receiving corps, but because how bad the quarterback play was, it's really hard to evaluate. Booker, I think, looked good. Got a film review of him coming soon. I really want to check out exactly, go really deep in his performance. I think the pass rush group looked fine. Again, those, Booth in the corners, Childress, some of these guys. Hall, I think, had a decent game. I think the cornerback room I feel a little bit better about after yesterday's performance in terms of can they survive. It's still going to be a disaster. Guys, you need to prepare yourself for the month of September to be really, really rough as the injuries, hopefully get healed up and get better, and as the Cowboys work on timing. It's going to be a rough month of September. I think we all have to agree that that's coming at this point. All right, let's get into the comments from yesterday real quick. Terrence Liebird, 8655, commented, the injuries on the side of the secondary is very concerning. Yeah, like I said, I mean, you've got some guys that are doing some things, scratching hard. Keeman Hall, Childress, love to see it. Kyrie Elam, love to see it, but they're just not what you want of a playoff team. They're not starters on a playoff team right now, right? So, again, you're going to go up against some good teams and really just NFL teams early in the season. It's going to be tough. David Dobbins, 5887, said the thing about Mozzie is that it takes a third or fourth seasons for most players to master. Just saying. Potentially, right, but we are in year 3, right? He's done one preseason, one regular season, one entire offseason, another preseason, another regular season, another entire offseason, and he hasn't looked good in camp. He hasn't looked good this preseason. So we're kind of in year 3 mode now, right? And there's been no, in my opinion, significant improvement. So I think that's the one concern there with Mozzie Smith. And I don't think he looked especially great last night, but I haven't seen the film. So I will say that I'll hold my judgment until I get a deeper look at Mozzie Smith's performance. Maybe he did have a great game. We'll have to take a look. I want to Plague Doctor commented, regular commenter. Thanks for the comment. I want to see Jaden Blue in the preseason, but I know we're a little way out. Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, the Cowboys at the running back position aren't even playing rookies, exciting rookies that they want to play. Blue's still banged up. Another thing on McClay, he's an evaluator. Ultimately, he doesn't make the draft decision, even if he has a lot of sway. Our problem isn't talent. I remember when that was a problem. If you're top heavy when you don't sign free agent, it's because you drafted well. We need to fix our scheme and discipline, which Shoddy has emphasized. Yeah, that's a great point, right? I mean, the talent is there. I mean, we're not seeing it now because the talent isn't playing. The question is, can that talent be disciplined? Can they have a good scheme, right? Will they utilize Dak Prescott correctly? Will they have a good scheme for the running backs, tight end, receivers, defense, right? And like I said, it's hard to see what the scheme's going to look like offensively. I kind of like what we're seeing scheme-wise defensively at this point, but again, it's very early to tell. The greatest one commented, your facts on Mozzie are patently wrong. He was a better player last year than he was in year 1, period. Secondly, go watch Mozzie's film instead of being lazy and relying on data, in quotes. Oh boy. It's not that hard to be objective when you actually have the right information in front of you. I don't give a, how much you like to read. Okay, that's not very nice. The only way to scout a player is to watch him play or cut on the film. You won't gain much respect as a content creator by just running your mouth about what you read. Go ask AOC about that. AOC, I guess you're talking about the congressman from New York. I don't get how that relates to Mozzie Smith, but I will say this. If that's your defense for a player, I mean, you didn't provide any evidence. You just said he's better. I think you're just making my argument for me there, right? You're just saying, shut up, you're wrong. You're probably losing there, dude. I'd recommend coming up with a better argument. Show some points, share some clips, give some links, give some information, right? There's a lot of smart people on that comment that bring up a lot of great data points. They talk to historical references. They reference other players, coaches, and give good insights. A lot of people do. That, the greatest one, not a good insight. Work on your comment game a little bit. This is from Adam the Wizard. Do you see the Cowboys potentially flipping Mozzie for another young DT? I mean, it seems fair, like the Boston and Fat trade a couple years ago. Maybe I think it's probably not Mozzie Smith. He may be included in the package. I mean, there's rumors of like a Tolbert trade or something like that. I mean, that's potentially in the works. I definitely think they've got to do something at defensive tackle, unless I mean, we'll have to wait and see. But boy, it's just not looking good up front. Next comment here, Super Chunk 6956, great name. Dak suffers the same problem as Romo. He needs more postseason wins. Romo would have been a shoe-in for the Hall of Fame with a few more postseason wins. Not a championship, just more playoff wins. Yeah, it's one of those things where, you get so, because there was such playoff disappointment and there wasn't enough playoff victory to offset that, right? Dan Marino had a lot of playoff disappointment, but at least he made it to a Super Bowl, right? So you have that one moment where you can sit there and say, you had a great run there. Romo never had a great run. Prescott hasn't had that great run yet, right? There's a lot of people that think Eli Manning is a Hall of Fame quarterback. I disagree, because he had 2 great runs in the postseason and did nothing else, basically his entire career, of any real merit, right? And that's just the reality. People remember those great runs. I agree 100%. Romo didn't have it. Prescott doesn't have it yet either. All right, this is from Delton SR, but how do you use that approach on Mozzie when it's like the coaching staff doesn't say or seem like they know what they want from him? Changes in defensive coordinator and weight. The previous DC said he was doing what he was asked to do. Seems like talent evaluation took a hit at the one technique defensive tackle position. Well, clearly they got that wrong, right? I mean, and listen, draft is tough. There's no one's perfect, of course. But the fact that Mozzie Smith was having to change, hey, we want you to get bigger, smaller, change weight, move around, that's usually a bad sign, right? If you're in an organization, if you're in a company, and we all, if you're a salesman, and if you're a great salesman, the company usually wants to keep you as a salesman or maybe promote you up the rank of sales, right? If you're a great engineer, you're usually going to have you do engineering work and then promote you up to engineering, like you're a coder or whatever. But if you're like constantly moving around, if the company's trying to find like, well, maybe you can do this or maybe you can do that or change what you do there, that's usually a sign that you're not good anywhere. And I think that's the problem that we saw with Mozzie Smith in the past and what we're seeing at least up to date. Again, I haven't seen his performance yet, the film against the Ravens, but I think that's what we've seen for most of his career at this point. Carmick Patina commented, I would love to see the offensive line gel and move some bodies in the run game and lots of Greer snaps. Well, you didn't get a lot of Greer snaps, but I think Booker did some good things. And we'll have to look at his film, but I like what I saw from Booker. It's hard when you're not playing 3 of your top five offensive linemen. And even you play BB with Booker just so that way Booker gets some reps with BB before a game, which was a smart move, by the way. Stephen Van Over commented, ballpark, PFF should have chosen that name as their info is generally in the ballpark, and as you point out, is very useful when used that way. They'll be spot on with some players and just plain miss on others, but in general are in the ballpark with the overall grades, if not assessments. It's using science to create art, which will always have issues. Solid tool, in my honest opinion, as well. Yeah, perfect. I agree 100%. It's a very, like I said yesterday, it's very flawed, but it gets you in the area. It gets you some data points, right? Like it's the scientific method, as I like to say. You observe a player, you say, okay, I think he's doing well, or I think he's doing poorly, and then you look at PFF's data, and it can just be a way to test your hypothesis, test your observation. Is it perfect? Absolutely not, right? It overweights some things, in my opinion, and underweights others. I think it's one of those metrics, PFF, if you're a hyper effort, a hyper speed player like DeMarvion Overshown, and you fly to the football and maybe it's, you're just incredible effort and speed and you just miss a tackle on a diving attempt, it will ping you for that. But if you had been slow and lazy, it won't ping you, right? So there are some flaws in the metrics, but overall it's a decent tool. Not perfect, but decent. A lot of Mozzie Smith stuff. Steven Speck, Z9M, commented, why do you think we are so bad at drafting defensive linemen? Tristan Hill, Mozzie Smith, and then Taco Charlton, all bad. I know Michael Parsons was a linebacker, right? But, he's been fine. Also, Digizua, right? We'll have to see about Ezeraku, but he seems to have to a good start. Sam Williams has done some good things, right? So, again, I think it's, Nealon's too early to tell, but it's one of those things, I think for first, second round guys, you're basically hoping for a 50% hit rate. Now, they've been bad there, but I think you could make an argument that, you flip a coin 3 times, the odds of you getting tails 3 times in a row isn't too crazy. And so 3 times they got tails, right? So is it just bad odds? Is it bad evaluation? I think it's too early to tell specifically, but it is an area of concern considering they're pretty good at wide receiver and offensive line and some other positions. I guess linebacker too, let's throw that in the mix. When you look at Leofau, you look at Overshown, you look at a guy like Shamar James. They've done a pretty good job at linebacker, and I guess decent at corner when you think about it with Diggs and Deron Bland. So I think when it's all settled and done, D-line certainly seems to be, at least defensive tackle, not a great position for Dallas when it comes to evaluation. All right. Let's see here. This is from Art Vanderlei, 6974. No quarterback is winning crap without a good to great supporting cast or infrastructure. The notion that the Brady's, Mahomes, and Montanas went out and won Super Bowls on their own is complete nonsense. Yeah, you're 100% right. And I think that's a fair point to bring up. I think it's like a sliding scale of how much infrastructure you need, right? The better quarterback you are, if you're Tom Brady, maybe you need a little less infrastructure. If you're Jalen Hurts, you need a lot more. If you're Brad Johnson, 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you need a lot more. You need an all-time great defense, right? So it's sort of a sliding scale. But I agree 100%. Montana, without that defense, without Jerry Rice, without Bill Walsh, without that great culture, doesn't win anything. Same thing with Brady with the Patriots, Mahomes with the Chiefs. You think the Mahomes Chiefs teams win Super Bowls without Chris Jones on defense and Steve Spagnuolo, a great defensive mind? Of course not, right? You're 100% correct there. Thank you for bringing that up. All right, that is most of the comments kind of repeat on those same line. I appreciate the commenters, guys. You guys do a great job, as always. I will break down more of this game as we get more data and get more film over the coming days. Like a disappointing performance, it doesn't mean that everything's in just a total disarray right now, but this is definitely not an ideal sign. We'll have to see how things look, of course, as we get prepared for week 1 against the Philadelphia Eagles. But until next time, I'm Nick, and this has been Saturday Morning Inspection.